Nelson, and I'm the Aboriginal Resource Teacher for School District 73. And I'm acknowledging that today I'll be harvesting plants on the beautiful land of the Secwepemc people in the Secwepemc Kulu. The session today is called First Peoples Plant Use and Methods of Extraction and will consist of two parts. The first part will be how to make menstruums and salves, and the second part will be how to dry traditional plants in order to make teas, smudges, and traditional tobaccos. So I'll be laying my tobacco down before I harvest any plants in order to ask permission to the plants and to the land and to the people for taking the plants and using them as medicine. And I thank you so much for all being here, and I hope that you enjoy the session, and I hope that you're able to go back to your classrooms, use this with your students, and just enjoy the whole process. So we'll see you soon in my kitchen. So welcome to my kitchen. As I said, we are going to be doing two parts to this session. The first part is making menstruums and salves. So I harvested some arnica, which is a small yellow sunflower, and I just put it into a jar with olive oil. So they're little yellow sunflowers, hard to see, but I put all my flowers in there and then I covered with olive oil. So this is now a menstruum. So a menstruum is a way to basically steep your plant in order to extract the medicine from the plant. So you can make menstruums with all different types of carriers depending on how you plan to use the medicine, whether it's a topical ointment or whether it's a tincture that you'll be ingesting. So carriers include oil, olive oil, grapeseed oil, avocado oil, traditionally would have been animal fat, apple cider vinegar, food grade alcohol, and Ribena. So I'm making a topical salve with the arnica blossoms, which are good for muscle aches, bruises, sprains, wounds, so wound healing, cuts and scrapes, joint pain and inflammation, swelling from broken bones, and it makes a tonic for the heart as well. So that's my arnica. I'm going to close the lid up and I'm going to let that steep for 6 weeks. And because there's some moisture in the flour, I have to make sure that I take care of it and I shake it and I just mix it up every day, every 2 days, and just don't forget about it. Just let it sit on the shelf, going moldy, because it will. You can dry the plant too first, which is I would just put it in a little cardboard box like this and just kind of give it a flip every day if I was drying it, and then I could put it into my carrier if I wanted to do it that way. But I'm committed to shaking it every day and taking care of it for 6 weeks. So that will be ready to process in, when are we now, middle of May, so towards the end of June. So that is beautiful. The next plant, is this one. So you'll probably be noticing these beautiful sunflowers all over the mountainsides right now. They've got these long stems, and they do. Arrowleaf balsam root grows on the side of mountains and is very important to keeping the mountainsides up. So they help with not erosion, and their root systems connect underneath the ground, which help keep mountainsides stable. So if you're harvesting arrowleaf balsam root, you will probably want to get them at the base of the mountain on a flatter area so that you're not harming just the mountainside. Also, when you're harvesting arrowleaf balsam root, you want to look for the young plants, because the grandfathers, as they're called, the older ones, the big ones, could have roots that are 6 to 8 feet long. So you're wanting to get the root, which is what is the main medicine of the balsam flower. So it would be pretty hard to get an 8-foot long root out of the mountainside. So you're wanting to look for those young balsam root flowers that just have you know, 5 or 6 little flowers, and not uh, a huge bush that has, you know, like 20 blossoms, because those ones are going to be very difficult to harvest. So so that's the flower. Again, wilts, but, and then because the leaf is shaped like an arrow head, hence the name. And I got this root, and it was actually attached, so it had two tubers. And so you just dig around the outside of the whole plant, and then you just kind of keep going with your tool. I have a crowbar that I use, and traditionally it would have been a root digger. But as I said, the root is the medicine, really, even though the whole plant was edible. So my granny talks about eating the stems and drying the flowers for tea, but the whole root is really the strongest medicine, and it's known basically for its respiratory benefits. So it's really good for the lungs, good for pneumonia. It's an expectorant, so that means it brings up phlegm. It's good for burns. It's good for cuts and scrapes and bruises. It's good for tuberculosis, whooping cough, as I said, very serious respiratory illness. And yeah, so the sap runs through this about a few weeks ago, so before the blossoms come. So that's the best time to actually harvest the root for the medicine, because it's that sap that is the really strong medicine in it. But I'm still going to use this root to make a medicine for my dad, actually, because he has a disease called progressive supranuclear palsy. So it causes all the muscles in his body to basically not move. They're like seized. And so he has a really hard time with his lungs, and he feels like he's choking all the time. So I want to help him to bring up like any phlegm that's trapped in his lungs and his throat. And so I want to make a tincture, and I want to make a very strong tincture, the strongest medicine that I can make to help him. So when you're wanting to do that, make the strongest medicine that you can, your best carrier is the food grade alcohol. So this will always draw out the most medicine from the plant that you're using. So for this one, I'm going to use the bark, and this is a food and medicine plant. So this whole inner part underneath the bark is it's kind of like a potato, like it's a starch. You could steam it, you could boil it, and you could eat it like a vegetable. So I'm not going to waste any. It's quite moist in there as well, so I will have to make sure to shake it. So I'm just going to chop it up. Oh, you can still smell the sap in there. It's just got such an earthy, beautiful, it's really like a strong, spicy smell almost. And I always say it's one of the reasons why I love learning about plants and learning about plant medicine and harvesting plants, is because I just love the way all the different plants smell. Oh, you can see some of the sap in there. It's so beautiful. So that it's in the bark. So I'm just making sure I chop it up, because when you start cutting it up is when the medicines can start releasing themselves. So I'm just going to snip. And I have a lot of different tools that I use for my harvesting, depending on whether it is a root or whether it is just pine needles or whether it is blossoms. I quite a lot of different things to help me process my plants. So scissors are good. I'm just basically cutting it into little chunks that will fit into my jar, and then I will add the carrier, because this one, as I said, is going to be a tincture. So my dad can then take it by the eyedropper under his tongue, and hopefully it will bring up the phlegm that gets caught in his lungs and causes him to choke. So this looks like it might be, oh, the smell, it's spicy. It's just so beautiful. Just chop and chop and chop and chop. And then jars. I'm like the mason jar queen. I have boxes of jars because they just are the essential in making my medicines. I need a jar that is probably going to be about this size again. So I'm going to just put all of my little chunks of balsam root bark and the whole tuber in there. And these are a nice size too, because like I said, you don't want to over harvest because, you know, who are you going to be using this medicine on? Who, you know, who's going to be using it? What are you going to be using it for? And it's just a shame to take more than you need, and then in a year from now it's going to be coming up again anyways. So just don't, you know, you don't want your things to go to waste, so just go bad. Certain plants can last years after you have processed them, but as a general rule, just make enough for a year, because a lot of them will start to go bad after a year, except for the ones that are in the food grade alcohol, because it really does preserve them. So I took my first real traditional medicinal class with a doctor named Dr. Jeannie Paul. She's a Stolo woman from down in Chilliwack, and she actually has an office at the Stolo Nation Health Center, and she takes walk-ins for anybody. You can go and see her, you book an appointment, and she is an amazing healer, an elder that I've taken a lot of my learnings from. And then another lady that I've gone to a few sessions with is Rona Bowie, who is a local, well, she lives in Chase, and she's extremely knowledgeable too. And so, yeah, that's what they say, like, just don't take more than you need. You can see that the bark has got, I'm sorry, I just love the smell. It still has some sap in there. So that's what we want. Chip it up, just put it all in there together. And then, ooh, like I said, I think I might switch jars and do a couple of different tinctures. So I'm going to do a smaller jar. So that's balsam root. And I'm going to add the alcohol. It should be the highest proof that you can find. And then again, that will be a commitment that I need to make for 6 weeks. Take it every day, and the medicine will draw out. And then I will strain it and put it into an eyedropper container for my dad. Respiratory is its big show. And that's what Dr. Jeannie says, you know, a lot of plants have many, many uses, but they usually have one big, that's their big show, that's their big thing that they help to treat. And it's the respiratory system for the balsam root. So I'm going to put that one away, and I might even just dry that because you can make tea with it too. So my dad likes to drink tea, so that would be a nice thing for him to have to help with the chest as well. So I'll put that away for now, and I will probably end up drying that, which I just, again, put it in a little cardboard and flip it and just take care of it for a week, or depending on the plant or so. Okay, so we've got our arnica salve that we're going to make in 6 weeks. We've got our balsam root tincture. We are going to do the Oregon grape next. So the Oregon grape is really abundant around here, and some people find it to be a nuisance because it grows so like easily. So the Oregon grape, a lot of people get it mistake it for holly because it's got this sharp kind of leaves. Right now it's in blossom, and the yellow, really bright yellow blossoms are really pretty. And then they will eventually turn into the grape, which is more like a berry. It's very tart, it's not sweet. A lot of people do make Oregon grape jelly with lots of sugar. But we are going to make, so the Oregon grape is from what Dr. Jeannie taught me, and I always remember what it's good for because of the yellow blossoms, and when you peel back the bark, the inner part of the stem is also really, really bright yellow, like fluorescent yellow. And that which it looks like is what it will cure often. So a plant will often resemble the thing that it will help. So like a carrot, when you cut the carrot open, it looks like an eyeball. It's good for the eyes. Well, same with this. So it's got these bright yellow flowers. It's got the really bright yellow inner part under the bark. And so it's good for everything yellow in the body. So it's good for ear infections. It's good for phlegm. It's good for infected cuts, like they'll have pus. It's good for urinary tract infections. It's good for the kidneys. It's good for jaundice. Let's see. It's good for stomach ulcers. It's good for the gastrointestinal reflux. It's good for upset stomach. It cleanses the bowels. It's good for fever, arthritis, jaundice, and yes, so the whole plant is medicinal, from the roots to the stems to the leaves. So I wanted to make a tincture with this using the apple cider vinegar. Or no, I wanted to use the Ribena. Either or. I personally don't love really sweet stuff, so I think I'll probably use the apple cider vinegar and make like a tincture. So, and it is sharp. It's like a lot of plants. Definitely, you need the thick leather gloves. But I'm just going to chop this and then put it into another little jar. And I use my other snippers. These are my best friends. These are the ones that I use the most. And just cut it up, because as I said, that's what ends up drawing out the medicine when you cut up the plant to little pieces. So this is, again, Oregon grape. It's everywhere, and it can be harvested throughout the year. So if you needed some in the middle of winter, you can find the leaves and you can harvest those. Obviously the blossoms come up this time of year, and then the grapes or the berries are ready around July and right into September. So I'm just chopping everything. The whole plant is useful. Some plants you have to take parts off. I think I learned a word the other day, was grumbling, I think is the word for that, when you have to take parts of the plant off, and some parts are used for, you know, one condition, and other parts of the plant are used for another condition. So I'm going to put this in, and the stems and the roots of this are supposed to be the strongest part of the medicine. The stems and the roots, that yellow, really yellow stem and inner bark. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put, typically your recipe should be 1/3 plant, 1/3 your carrier. So in this case, it is my apple cider vinegar. And then I forgot to do this with the alcohol, but that's okay. It's going to be just very potent. And then 1/3 water. Okay. That's good. Now I need to make sure that I label everything, because you will forget what is what, because things start to look the same. So this is going to be Oregon grape tincture and apple cider vinegar. Apple cider. So I just pop that on the lid. And then this, like I said, it's going to be really potent because I've got to put 1/3 water in. That's okay. Is balsam root and food grade alcohol. Date it too, so that you know in 6 weeks when it's done. Time to strain it. Okay, next menstruum is, okay, fir pitch. So where is my fir pitch? So I went out and I got some pitch from the Douglas fir tree. That's one big chunk. Again, the smell is so lovely. It's just so, it makes you breathe deeply, which again is what the purpose of it is for the respiratory system. So it's good for coughs, colds, flus, winter bugs. It's actually interesting that the tree, you can find the sap on the tree that has a wound itself. So it's trying to heal itself when the sap is running out. So for whatever reason, it's got an owie and the sap just runs there, and that's where you'll find some big chunks like this. And you can just use your fingers to kind of pull it off, or if you have like a butter knife, but it is sticky and it is messy. If you don't have like a good jar to hold it in, I've put it in my pockets before and that wasn't smart, but yeah, so I just got basically a handful of these chunks. They're like little rocks, and I can put, so I don't have to steep this for 6 weeks. I can actually just take, in order to prepare the pitch, I will put so there's 1 part pitch to 2 to 3 parts oil. So I'm just going to basically fill this jar and then heat it. So I want to melt the pitch into the oil, so then I have the fir pitch oil, which again, I will tell you all the great things it's good for. Sores, so as the tree heals itself, the sap heals open wounds. So even if you're in, a situation where you have a cut and you need something to help it, you can put pitch straight from the tree onto your wound. It's good for cold, flu, congestion, breaking up phlegm. It opens up breathing passages. It reduces irritating dry coughs. It deepens the breath and calms the mind and encourages restful sleep. So when you're using things like pitch and things like plants that have sap and that sticky resin, then you need special tools. So I have a pot that I use when I'm working with specifically resinous plants and properties, because this is what happens. You're never going to get it fully off. So you want to use the same tools, spoons, jars, and pots for those things that have really, really sticky resin. So we're just going to basically just heat it up and melt it all together. And then we'll have that, and we can mix that oil, that fir pitch oil, with all different other kinds of plants that we're using. So you can mix different menstruums after they're strained together when you're making your medicine. So if you really want a really strong one for as an expectorant to bring up the phlegm, or for burns, or for you take those plants that are really known for that healing, and you can mix them together to make an extra strong medicine. Okay, so we're going to let that heat up, and then, okay, so after 6 weeks, when you go to strain your plant out of your carrier, this is Devil's Club. So Devil's Club, and it's been 6 weeks. So this is ready to be strained. So you need, I had another container. Oh, I'm going to use this one. You want to strain the plant, dry that, away from your carrier. So I have a strainer, and I'm going to draw or strain the oil, and then after there's just the plant left in the jar, that is then dross. There's no medicine left in that plant, and you can give it back to the earth. You can compost it, but try to be respectful of it and don't just throw it in the garbage. So just take it back to the earth or compost it. And so to get especially with the Devil's Club, you really want to get every last drop, because it is such a powerful medicine. And you can use cheesecloth to squeeze every last bit out. I actually should have done a tincture with this Devil's Club that I harvested, again for my dad, because I had some dried inner bark that he uses, and it's just amazing how it draws the phlegm out of his lungs. So I actually should have dried some more for him, or made a tincture with that. But the Devil's Club. The Devil's Club is kind of a scary plant to harvest, because it is covered in thick, dense, very sharp needles. And you need the thick leather gloves to get at it, and then you need to scrape all the needles off of it, and then you need to go to get underneath the top layer of bark and into the inner bark, which is the strong medicine. So Devil's Club is good for arthritis. It's good for certain types of cancer, cuts, wounds, fever, tuberculosis, stomach trouble, coughs, colds, sore throats, diabetes, low blood sugar, pneumonia, swollen glands, boils, and skin infections. So it's an amazing plant. So just let that strain. And that is how you can keep the oil just like that and have it just a straight oil if you're wanting to rub it on like sore joints. But I like to make salves because it's sort of nicer to use. So that's good like that. I don't have to make anything with it right away. I can keep it like that. I can put it into like a container that has a pump that then you can just kind of pump it onto your hands or whatever spot you're using it for. So this is the dross, and I will take that back to the earth. And so we were also going to do a salve, a cottonwood bud salve. So how's this? Oh, it's starting to melt. So basically it just starts to get gooey and gummy, and it just melts down. So you're just trying to clean the pitch. You're just trying to get rid of any pieces of bark that may be in there, or dirt or bugs, and then strain it, and then you have your fir pitch oil, which again you can just use just as the oil. Take it camping for those. Oh, the smell, so beautiful. Maybe actually it looks pretty much done. So that did not take long. So obviously it depends on how big the chunks are too. So that is ready to strain as well. So what I'm going to do is strain it into this. Get rid of all those little chunks of bark and dirt. And there is your pitch oil. There, your pitch oil. And then, as I said, you can add that to different ointments that you're making in addition to the arnica or the cottonwood bud. So, it's hot. And so now I have this cottonwood bud. So cottonwood buds are ready to be harvested around March, depending on the weather. So I harvested my cottonwood buds, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, and I already strained the buds out. You can actually let the cottonwood buds steep for 6 months or longer because there's so much sticky resonance out of them that they can just continue to draw out of, the carrier can continue to draw that resin out. And it doesn't go bad, it doesn't go rancid, it actually like preserves itself. So this is the cottonwood bud oil that I already strained, and I will show you how to make the topical ointment or salve with this. So cottonwood buds are one of my favorite things to harvest because of the scent and because I have eczema on my leg and I love it for that. It just is very helpful, but it's good for a lot of things. So It reduces inflammation. It's pain relief for sore muscles and strains. It's good for joint swelling, fever, cold sores, lesions, dry coughs, and again, it's one of those expectorants. So actually the tree, the bark, even, we'll make some tea with the bark in a later part of the session. But yeah, it's just an amazing, amazing, powerful plant, the whole thing. But the buds is what I really like to use. So there's my bud oil. So I'm going to first, here I have beeswax. So beeswax in itself is medicinal because bees collect pollen, and the pollen that they collect often, especially cottonwood trees, are the first tree that they collect pollen from. In the spring when they come out of their hives, and they make something called propolis, which is a huge immune system booster. But anyway, so I have this local beeswax, and the recipe is same, like one part beeswax to 3 parts oil. So I eyeball it, and I don't like to have salve. I like my salve just a little bit more hard than like polysporin, say, but not much. Like it has to be easy to use and easy to melt on your skin. So you just kind of want to give it that some bit solid, but not so it's, you know, too hard to get. So I'm going to put in for that much oil, a little bit more maybe. I'm going to pop it in my pan, let it melt, and then add my oil. Some people use a double boiler. I don't. I just pour my oil right into my melted beeswax, and then let it remelt all together. And then I have my jars ready to go for my salves. And you do really need to be ready and prepared with all of your tools and all of your materials, and not be flustered and trying to find stuff in the middle of making your medicines. So that will take about another 30 seconds, I'd say, and then I'm just going to pour my oil right into my pan. Oh, it's smoking so hard. Okay. Pouring my cottonwood bud oil into my beeswax. And then the smell in here, it's so beautiful. The mix of cottonwood bud oil and the beeswax scent is just so beautiful. Okay, so we'll melt that down a little bit. And then here's another menstruum. So balsam root and alcohol, apple cider vinegar and Oregon grape, arnica in oil, fir pitch in oil, and then devil's club oil. And I like the evergreen. It's just a really easy one, and it seems to just works really well for like cuts and scrapes. It's a great one I say to take camping because it's good for burns. So I just got like ponderosa pine chopped up, high bush juniper chopped up, and Douglas fir, I believe, in there. It's not quite ready, but that's another menstruum that I just have right now, and that I make quite a bit with students. So hot. I have this cottonwood bud menstruum that has been soaking in the Ribena. So I want to give my dad some of this one as well for as an expectorant. Those cottonwood buds are just so powerful. So I am going to strain it. But first, I will pour my salves into my jar. So I've got my hot oil. I'm just going to, well, let's show you. Pour it into my measuring cup. And then pour it into my jars. Oh, this smells so beautiful. And as I said, I really love this one for sore muscles, for eczema or bad skin conditions. I love it when it's dried as a tea. It's really good for the lungs and the immune system. So that one, and again, rheumatoid arthritis. So it's really good for sore joints. And actually, they call it the witch's fingers because a witch's fingers are gnarly looking and the joints are all, you know, just kind of deformed, and that's what the branches look like with the buds on them. So it's again one of those, which it looks like is what it'll cure bad gnarly arthritis. Okay, so those are all poured and they will take, I don't know, half an hour to cool and harden slightly, and then they're just easy to scoop out and to put on your owies. Okay, so this is the cottonwood buds that have been soaking in the Ribena. So I'm going to strain the buds out. And ooh, I had another really tiny strainer. See, this is what I mean. You have to have your stuff ready to go. That's hard. Maybe what I'll do is I might have another little strainer down here. Well, oh, perfect. So I'm just going to clean this other strainer out, and then make my tincture. Okay, can you see? Okay, I have another little jar, and I'm just going to pour the Ribena. Oh, that's going to be so good for my dad. I can't wait for him to try it. So there's my dross, and the dross is the plant that is now no medicine left in it. Leftovers. And then I've got my eyedropper bottles. And I have my turkey baster. And then I'm just basically going to put the medicine into the jar. Oh! I might need 3 of these jars actually. And then you can just take that 2-3 times a day. Oh. I'll need another one of those. That's okay, I'll get it after. And then label. I gotta get some little stickers for the outside of my jars, but I'll do that later. Okay, so there is my cottonwood bud tincture for my dad. So I think that I covered everything for the first part of the session. And so I did cottonwood bud salve, I did the Devil's Club oil, I did the fir pitch and oil, I did the balsam root and alcohol, I did the Oregon grape and apple cider vinegar, and the arnica blossoms in oil. So that's it for this part of the session, and then I will see you in a little bit for learning how to make teas and traditional tobaccos and smudge. So we'll see you in a little bit. Thanks for joining in. Welcome back, second part of the session. So as I said, I'm going to be demonstrating how to make teas, some tobacco, and some smudge. So let's start first by talking about tobacco. So I always tell students, when we talk about traditional tobacco and the uses of traditional tobacco, it's not the same thing as cigarettes. A lot of plants, when you burn them, that's the healing property. So things like the great mullein, when you burn the roots, that's the actual medicine. The smoke is what's healing for things like asthma, bronchitis, whooping cough, really serious lung conditions. And that's how it is with many plants. It's the smoke that is going to help you feel better. So we'll start by making some traditional tobacco. And this is tobacco that I make and I use when I go to harvest plants. I lay tobacco down and I make an offering and I ask the plant for permission to be there and to take from it. And I tell the plant what I am going to be using it for and who I'm going to be using it on and what my purpose is. So that's the tobacco that we're going to make today. So I have Kinnikinnick, which is a traditional tobacco. Kinnikinnick is also something you can make tea with. And you can consume it. Right now it's got little pink berries on, or little pink blossoms that will turn into little, very, very late little berries. And it's already like dry. So in order to dry it after you've harvested it, Kinnikinnick, you can tie it and hang it. Or you can just put it in like a little cardboard box and you can just make sure you're flipping it and just turning it so that it's not going moldy or anything. And it really doesn't take long for Kinnikinnick to dry. So I've got all the stems. So I'm just going to basically take all of the little leaves off the stems and put them into my roasting pan. I've got my oven on very low. I think it's on about 250. And then we're just going to slowly roast the leaves. And again, me and my like crazy obsession with the scent of all the plants when they're being processed is I just wish that you could smell through video. And actually, obviously, if it wasn't COVID times, we would be gathering together and doing this as a group, and you would get to experience all the sensory parts of it. And students do love that whole part of it being a full sensory experience, right? From the touch to the smell to the. I gotta let my dogs out. So, yeah, just get all the leaves off the cover. They pop right off. And that's what happens with most, the plants that you dry. They just are easy to get off the main stem once they're dry. And then I'm going to pop that in the oven. And then we are going to dry. I'll show you how to dry the mullein. So the mullein is also another amazing plant that can be dried for tea and or dried for tobacco. It's got a bit of a myth around it. So people think because it's got this velvety, soft leaf, that it was Indian toilet paper. Not true. The leaves actually have really like microscopic, tiny little slivers. So if you were to use that as toilet paper, if you were in a bind in the forest, you would end up having some itchies. And yeah, so it's not, even when you make a tea out of it, you have to double strain it. So if you're pouring hot water through a filter with the leaves in it, you would need to filter it twice, because those little slivers, if you ingest them, they're going to come out the other end and be very uncomfortable. So it isn't Indian toilet paper at all. It's a myth. Don't use it in that way. But it is a good medicine. So again, it's another one that's really good for the lungs, the respiratory system. The plant grows in a 2-year cycle. So the first year it just grows with this rosette of leaves, and then the second year it gets quite a long stalk on it with tiny little yellow blossoms at the top of it. And those blossoms actually have a mild narcotic. So those blossoms, if harvested, could have been used to treat bad pain. It's also good for ear infections. Let's see, mullein. It is good for bronchitis, pneumonia, earaches, cold, chills, flu, swine flu, allergies, tonsillitis, sore throats, asthma, migraines, joint pain, gout, like multi purpose medicine. And it's quite abundant. Like often I think it grows in places where the soil has been disturbed, and it just takes off. So you'll see like groves of them in certain areas where the soil has been disturbed on the side of the road, yeah, it grew, and it wasn't native to this area, but it was once it came from Europe, it was utilized. Okay, so now I've got all my little stems. They're emptied of their leaves, and I've got all my little leaves, and I'm gonna pop them in the oven, and then it's gonna start smelling really beautiful in here. Okay. Okay, so there is my roasting pan full of kinnikinnick. As I said, you could just, once this is dry like this, you can also just put it in a little baggie or a jar I like to keep my teas in, and have it as a tea. So let's pop it in the oven. We'll just kind of keep an eye on it. We won't like burn it or anything, but we're going to keep the door slightly open. Take a look. Okay. So we've got that going. For the mullein, the great mullein, if we want to dry it, and again, I said like the roots are can be dried and burned for asthma, bronchitis, whooping cough, really serious lung conditions. Just give this a little wash. And then it's really convenient to have little cardboard flats for your drying of your plants. And you can just as easily hang this in your windowsill or hang it and just let it dry, you know, a week. But I'm just going to, I'm not going to hang it. I'm going to dry it just in my tray. So, my scissors. I could actually put this, maybe I will put this through my chipper. So I have a yard chipper just because I do a lot of this and it just is quicker and more convenient, but you can just cut too. But for time's sake, I'm going to throw this through my chipper. So it's going to be loud. So I got quite a bit. That was just 3 little rosettes that I had harvested, and so this is quite a bit. So I am going to make a fair bit of tobacco because I will be making a lot of offerings over the course of the year, and I will also make some tea with that. So like I said, I just have it in the tray, and I just give it a shake and just turn it, and this will be nice and dried in a week. So I'll put that over. Okay, so that will be a tobacco and that will be a tea. But I could also have, if I wanted to infuse, I could actually infuse it with some oil for ear infections, and I've never tried that. I've never actually steeped mullein in oil, but I want to try it. So maybe I should actually do that. Not right now, because we're working on drying our plants for teas, tobaccos, and smudges. Okay, so next. Okay, so let's look at the sage. The sage is edible. You can dry it for tea. You can use it as a smudge. It cleanses the air. It's also a body cleanser. So if you just needed just to cleanse your spirit, just to cleanse your energy, you could boil it and make a decoction. So boil it in water and then add that decoction or that boiled steeped tea into your bath, and it would soothe sore muscles, sore feet. But for this, we are going to make it into a smudge. So there's a couple of ways that I prepare sage, and one is to make sage wands. So just taking the whole stem and just getting, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 stems. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even one more, 6, just depends. And then I flip them so they burn more evenly. And I didn't bring my string. I usually just have like embroidery thread, and I will just tie all the way down to the end, tie all the way back up to the top, and then hang it to dry. So I do hang these for at least a week, because they're like dense, so it takes a little bit longer to dry. Or if I'm just wanting like a loose leaf smudge, I again put them in my cardboard box and flip for like a week or so. And then when they're dry, it's easy to just kind of go, and then all the leaves come off, and you can put it in a jar, and you can put it in your abalone shell or whatever you like to put your plant in for your smudge, like that. So that is simple as that, sage. That's the most common sort of easy smudge to make and to use. But there's other smudges. So the smudges can be made with all different sorts of things for all different sorts of prayers. And this one is a mixture that I dried high bush juniper, which is a juniper that we use as a smudge. We don't eat this one, and this is another juniper, which is low bush juniper, a common juniper. It's much pricklier. They both have the berries, but this one is actually, you can make tea with it and ingest it, but only very small amount. Like if you were doing a kettle of tea, you would need like maybe that much. You don't, it's full of vitamin C, as most of the conifers are, the evergreens, like the Douglas fir. Okay, but I won't get off track. So this one is high bush juniper, Omarosa pine, and Douglas fir. So I dried it, and then I just by hand, I kind of just like broke it all up, and now I have it in my jar, but I want it to be like a powder. So I'm just gonna put it in my blender. It's gonna be loud again. Now I have juniper pine for smudge. So again, I don't have my shell here, but I do have another great way that I like to use just a little mini pan, because I can smudge and then just leave it to burn out in my pan. So now I have it is so beautiful, like the smell, the scent, and yeah, again, it's a cleanser. So juniper, high bush juniper, low bush juniper, there's an antiviral, antimicrobial, and it kills airborne airborne bacteria and viruses. So you can also put this in a pot of water, and the steam will clean your home. So it's used a lot during cold and flu season, and it's also used after somebody passes, just to cleanse the air and cleanse the space and cleanse the energy. Yeah, so that's actually ready to be jarred up too. So I can put that in there. And the high bush juniper, as I said, isn't one that we eat or drink as tea. It's only the low bush juniper. So I can grind that up later. Okay, so that is that smudge. And oh, I wanted to show you that I took the extra balsam root that I harvested, and I just have it drying in this little cardboard box, and it will be used as tea later on for myself, my dad, for all those cold, flu, virus, pneumonia, lung infections, bronchitis, next winter. Very good tea. Okay, also I wanted to show you this. So not quite ready, but they're getting there very quickly, are these fir tips. So if you see the new little growth, they're almost like fluorescent green little fir tips. You can harvest those, and all you need is just a little pinch in a cup, and you can pour hot water over them, fresh like that, and full of vitamin C and just immune booster. And it's a hydrator, so if you're dehydrated, it's supposed to be really good for rehydration. So they're almost ready. I'll give it a couple more days before I go out and harvest those. You can throw those just straight into a bag and into the freezer and take them out as you need them. You don't necessarily have to dry them. You can infuse them in water and drink it just like that, like a cold fir tip iced tea. Okay, what else do I have? I think I was going to show you these red willow. So red willow, it's the bark that we use as medicine. It's got salicin, so that's like natural aspirin. So you just take the bark off, and you can dry the bark for tea, for pain. If the bark doesn't want to come off easily, you can always use a potato peeler, but it's kind of coming off pretty easily for me, so I just have to peel it like that. And yeah, it's pain relief, and it's an aspirin. It's a natural aspirin. So just peel it, and again, throw it in your cardboard box. And you're good to dry. This is kind of getting a little bit hard to peel. But this is actually easier than the potato peeler, I think. There we go. And I used to love doing this. I remember like playing with like sticks as a kid, like, before we had all the devices that we have now. And I would just play with sticks and peel them. And of course, I wouldn't recommend that now. Like if there was a stick lying around, and I wouldn't just go and rip them off the trees. And I tell kids that too. It actually hurts the plant when you just start ripping branches and things right off the tree. Like you have to make that offer, and you have to ask for its permission. You know, acknowledge that it is alive. Acknowledge that it is, you know, a part of this territory, that it belongs here, that this is its home, and just honor it. So then snip, my scissors, take a look at my kinnikinnick and get my cardboard tray out. So there's my red willow bark tea. Let that dry. I'll do the other ones after, so I have a nice good batch of red willow bark tea. Another one that is really powerful also is the cottonwood bark. So it's got this stem, and I actually got these stems, you know, like 6 weeks more ago, and I still have some buds. They're still sticky, so I can actually pop those off. That's what I was saying about the witch's fingers. They look like witch's fingers, and they heal rheumatoid arthritis and sore joints. So I can normally, I would just sit and get a bunch of branches and pop the buds right off and infuse those in oil, or dry them is what I should actually be doing. I should be drying these ones. And I will do that. They're still sticky. They didn't open, but it's just, these buds are ready just before the leaf comes out. So it's like, just like sometimes you'll get them just when the leaf is starting to come out, and then it's just about too late to harvest them. So, but I'll dry these ones for tea. The whole tree is medicinal, and it was a really important plant just because it was tools, technology. I mean, dugout canoes were made out of cottonwood trees. And so I'm going to use my potato peeler to get the bark off this. Another really important one for lung health, pneumonia, immune system booster, very serious respiratory conditions is what this bark is used for. So I'll probably get some to my dad. See, it smells like maraschino cherries. That's like the closest description I have to explain what the cottonwood stems smell like, and it's a beautiful smell. Like, I never liked the taste of maraschino cherries, but the smell was always really pretty. It's just kind of a surprising smell coming from a branch, and you don't smell it until you get into it, until you open it up and cut it open, and then it's like, whoa, wow. Okay, so this, and then it can be dried. It can be made into a, like, ground up in my grinder and made into like a powder, and made into a really nice powder, like for tea to mix in hot water. Sometimes I just mix up my teas, and like, people think they're like the best teas they've ever had, better than anything you could get from like David's Teas or some specialty place like that. Like, the flavors are just so beautiful. So I usually put like just a little concoction of different plants in my kettle. Okay, so they're pretty gnarly, so they've got all these little, you know, knobs and everything else. So it's like not smooth like the red willow, but you get the idea. So that's how you get the bark off of a cottonwood tree stem. Okay, again, my little tray. And it's still like pretty moist, so I've had those stems out in my garage for like weeks, but they're still moist. So anyways, they'll need a few days to dry. And that is my cottonwood branch or cottonwood bark. That up there. Okay. What was, oh, I wanted to check my tobacco. Let me turn it up a bit. Okay, I wanted to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to stick these cottonwood buds in one of the trays. Actually, right in with the cottonwood bark. I also have the Oregon grape. So we made a tincture earlier with that, but we might as well not waste this and make a tea. So I think I'll just throw it through my chipper. I've done that before. I forgot to put my tray back in and then it spits it all over my floor. Okay, so let's put this in the chipper. Okay, I have also, so most people are kind of familiar now with the soap berries. So soap berries are basically magic in a berry, and the whole plant is medicinal. From the roots to the stems to the leaves to the berries when they finally come, which they're just starting to get their leaves, but the berries are usually ready around July into August, and it's just a superfood. So it's good for circulation, it's good for cleansing the liver, it can be used topically, it can be used internally, it's good for diabetes, it's good for boils on the skin, it's used as a shampoo, it's used for so many different things, and it just is my favorite. So as I said, the stems, the leaves, everything can be ingested. So I will put this through my chipper and make a tea out of it. What I said. All over my floor. Okay, I'll be getting my vacuum out at the end of this. Okay, so I guess I won't be making tea with that, but I did make a big mess, so that's too bad. Okay, I'm tired. Okay, so that would have been a good tea, but I already have some of that. Oh, that's what I wanted to tell you too. So I did just get, so this is the difference between the arnica and the balsam root. So they're both a type of sunflower, but they're different in their uses, and they're different, and they're different. So this is what an arnica stem looks like, and the sunflower. And the scent is like oranges. It's like just a tangerine orange. That's what it smells like. And then this is the balsam root sunflower. So I didn't get the stems, but there is a difference. The balsam root stems are very long, and they're the arrowleaf balsam root. They do look pretty darn similar, but they're actually quite a bit bigger when they're, and that's the arnica. So I am going to, I'm not making tea with the arnica because there are some dangers in eating it. So I am going to make another salve with my arnica because it is really good for skin conditions. It's really good for skin conditions. And then I will make a tea with my balsam blossoms. I have one tray left, so I'll use that for my blossoms. And I'll just flip, and they don't take long to dry. I'll just flip and flip, and then as I'm flipping, I just kind of use my fingers to break them up, and then I'll just throw them in the jar when they're nice and dry and throw them into my kettle. And again, great for the respiratory system and just overall health. The seeds actually were used and ground up into like a powder for soups and stews, and yeah. So that's that. And I wanted to show you that this is starting to come up. So this is yarrow. So these are just the little furry little leaves that are starting to pop up out of the ground now, and the stems are starting, and then by summer they'll have a long stem with a little white and very quite pungent smelling umbrella blossom at the top, and it's medicine. So the leaves are medicine, so these can be harvested right now and dried to make tea. So I have some from last year. And the yarrow, so this is basically what it looks like. I could even, it smells so good. Like, it smells so lovely. It's almost like minty. And yeah, so I'm just gonna dry the leaves. I just got a few leaves today, but I will go out and harvest some more a little bit later with the blossoms. So yarrow, dry those in with my sunflowers. Yarrow is good for if I can find it. It's good for toothaches. It's good for pain. It's got something in it that that is good for pain. So it's like a mild narcotic. I had it. I thought I had it in here. Let's see. Come on. Cramps, gastrointestinal pain, stomach upset, migraines, yeah, pain is what its big show is. So you could actually make a poultice, so you could actually chew the plant up and just kind of grind it up and then like put it on a sore toothache. Yeah, I don't know where that is, but anyways, it's good for pain. And I think that's just about it. This is the only other thing I think I've talked about this, about the juniper. You can drink this in a tea in very small amounts. You can steam this on your stove to kill viruses and bacteria in your space. And I like to use it in my evergreen salve for taking caffeine, for bug bites, for cuts and wounds and scrapes and burns. And yeah, so that's low bush juniper. And you need, it's kind of soft right now because it's spring and the needles aren't really prickly, but in in a little while, in a couple of months or less, it'll be really, really prickly, and you'll need thick leather gloves to harvest it. Needles. Okay, so that is pretty much it. Let's check on the kinnikinick. I think it might still be a little while before it's done because I might have it on too low. But it's starting to smell really pretty. I might just shut that. But yeah, so that when that's done and it's nice and dry, then again, I'll take my mullein and I'll mix it with my kinnikinick, and you could have mixed it with buckbrush, but I didn't have any. But it's just nice to have a traditional tobacco when you're going out and harvesting and making offerings. So I don't know, I just prefer a nice traditional tobacco over, cigarettes when I'm making offerings. Cigarette tobacco, and it can actually be smoked in ceremony and used in sweat lodge and that. So I hope everybody has learned a few things. I'm always available to chat with if you need any support in this way or in any other way that you can utilize my skills. And I'm happy to come and visit classrooms, but I'm even more happy when teachers actually feel confident to do this on their own with their students. And there's just an endless number of plants to learn about. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, and I'm constantly learning and learning and learning and learning. Like, I'm far from an expert, but I just have a high interest in it, and I enjoy it, and I say every time, that the harvesting part of the process, the part where you go out and you are on the land and you are making your offerings and you are giving thanks for being there, and just that whole process of being present and in the moment of harvesting and being on the land is such a huge part of the healing as well that a plant gives you. That's the first thing you do when you walk into a coniferous forest full of Douglas fir and spruce is like take a deep breath, and that's because it's good for your lungs. You're meant to breathe the medicines deeply in that grow in a coniferous forest. So you can never be mad or sad or angry when you're harvesting. You're just present, and so that's why I just love it so much. So there is a couple of books that I recommend. So this one is always the go-to. A lot of plants. So this is plants of the southern interior British Columbia and inland Northwest. Somebody said it was discontinued, but it's not. I think you can still find it because a friend of mine did actually find it a couple of weeks ago and purchased it. And it's great because some plants look identical to one another, and one might be, have benefits, and one might be like highly poisonous. So there's just small distinctions that have to be made between the plants, and it's really important to know those. Like I was learning about, I've been reading about lichen, black lichen, old man's beard, and I know my granny used to talk about eating black lichen, and you can make bread with it, and it was some type of candy that she ate when she was a kid. But as I was starting to research it, it turns out that there's two black lichen, and they both grow abundantly around this area, and one is highly poisonous, and the other one is like a really important food source. So I'm just a little nervous around being able to identify the two, so I'll just wait on that before I start harvesting black lichen. But anyways, yeah, and then there's this one which is going to be my summer reading: Ancient Pathways, Ancestral Knowledge, Ethnobotany and Ecological Wisdom of Indigenous Peoples of North America. So that's my summer reading. There's little just gems that you can come across that just have all kinds of useful information. And
And honestly, I just do find a lot, and I cross-reference a lot when I go online and I search medicinal uses of Douglas fir, medicinal traditional uses of red willow, and just, you know, dig deep, and you'll just, you'll sort of get the main points. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it today. And again, any questions, you can always get a hold of me, T. Nielsen at exe.st73.bc.ca. And that's it. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll talk again soon.